Read it first and then decide. You will no doubt be surprised that I'm writing to you after we both vowed never to communicate with each other again after the disastrous holiday together last year. However, a certain event has taken place which I feel duty-bound to inform you of. I have tussled with my conscience as to whether to keep my distance and keep mum, but I find I cannot lie, not even, as politicians seem to do, by emission. There is no nice way to impart the dreadful news I have to tell you. Bill Snapes is dead. You remember, of course, after dallying with us both, he set up with a girl half his age, and I think I told you they'd had a baby. Well, no sooner did she have that baby, but another one popped out, and the upshot is that he had a heart attack last week from which he hasn't recovered, and the funeral is on Friday. The village is buzzing with the rumour that he was taking Niagara, which just goes to show what happens if you try to burn the candle at both ends. Certainly, since it happened, the queue at the chemist's has gone down considerably, and his old golfing cronies are looking far less jaunty. I know that you were once fond of him, so in the circumstances, if you do want to pay your respects at the service, which is at 3 in the afternoon, you could stay overnight with me on the put-you-up in the living-room. I have already checked the buses and trains and found that there is no way you could get back afterwards unless you spend the night on the platform at Nottingham, where you'd have to change. Incidentally, since I'm writing anyway, I thought I'd just mention that I found your swimming costume the other week rolled up inside my old pack-a-mac, which I was about to donate to the village Minnelium Bus Shelter Fund. I told you there would be a perfectly good explanation for its disappearance, which did not involve either me stealing it to wear myself or to make you less attractive on the beach next to me. I won't enclose it now, as it would be a waste of postage stamps if you're coming over next week, and anyway, as you'll see for yourself, the elastic has gone in the legs. When I think of all the trouble it caused. But far be it from me to point the finger of blame or to rake up ancient history, and anyway the red wine came out of my cream skirt on the third wash, so as far as I'm concerned, the hatchet is well and truly buried. Can you let me know of your intentions either way as soon as possible, so I can give young Tracy Snapes an idea of numbers? Best wishes, Irene Spencer.
Sheep-dipper's Shed, Shooter's Hill, Shale Shap, near Great Shagthorn, Darbs Wed. Dear Irene, I was covered in shame on receipt of your letter, because it's been on my mind to write to you for months, particularly after I found several photos of us on that very holiday. Remember that lovely Italian man who insisted on snapping us at the Fountain of Trevi? He caught what I like to think is the essential you, grimacing with your handbag raised as though you were about to strike me. I did have a laugh, and it put me in mind of so many similar occasions over the years we have known each other. As you see, I am at my son Howard's. I came here after a brief sojourn at Golden Pastures Residential Home. I'd had a nasty bout of flu which led to slight deafness, but my daughter Karen decided my blank stare as she was screaming something about her latest love tangle was incipient Alzheimer's, and persuaded Howard to commit me to long-term care for the elderly. Lord save us from overdramatic daughters. I got my hearing back and left after a fortnight, though I must say it was very pleasant to have all one's meals prepared, even though the cocoa did taste funny. I am now waiting for sheltered accommodation to become vacant. I suppose that means waiting for one of the poor old dears to die. Talking of funerals, I never thought I would wish it on anybody, but life at Sheep-dipper's Shed, even with one's favourite child, is a little trying. The sheep's yoghurt has not been doing at all well since all that fuss about BSC affecting dairy products, and some days I'm at my wit's end as to how to use up 60 gallons. Perhaps I should take a leaf out of Cleopatra's book and bath in it. Might be preferable to tepid solar-heated water with the pungent aroma of night soil. The toilet facilities here have not improved, despite Howard and his partner Anthony having created their own personal cesspit. Poor Bill. A case of what goes around comes around, or what goes up must come down if he really was taking Niagara. Oh, my goodness, I've just realised Friday is the day after tomorrow. They've taken so long to forward your letter. The matron at Golden Pastures is a little disorganised. I once surprised her with a bottle of sherry poised over a mug at 9:30 in the morning. Of course I'll come. It's only proper. Besides, I'm curious for a glance at this Tracy. I'd love to stay, if only for the hot water. I'll taxi to yours from the station and change. Oh dear, what on earth will I wear? Howard went through my wardrobe when I arrived and chucked out everything in man-made fibres. That reminds me, by all means give that bathing costume to the bus shelter fund. Perhaps someone with large thighs will buy it. Howard is planning the biggest party the Derby Dales has known for New Year's Eve 99. He's asked me to help him with the catering. At last a use for the yoghurt. We'll jump on Howard's bike and pedal this the 4 miles to the post. Really, you can take this eco stuff too far. Howard and Anthony do live up a 1 in 4 hill. Look forward to seeing you, if I survive it. All the best, Vera.
Saturday. Dear Howard, it is with great regret that I write to tell you that your mother has had an accident while staying here with me, but is not seriously ill. I have not yet ascertained the exact details of the full circumstances of her fall, as her dentures broke during the incident and her lips have swollen up like balloons, so she's making even less sense than normal. Suffice it to say that, as usual, the combination of strong drink and a member of the opposite sex had a disastrous effect on her. And not only on her. The gentleman in question fortunately escaped with a black eye and a broken toe, but Tracy Snapes's pelargoniums will never be the same again. And all of this during the baked meats of Tracy's husband's funeral. I was so embarrassed I didn't know where to put myself. But then again, what did I expect? Your mother has never given me anything but trouble. The hospital released her because they didn't have a bed, so now neither have I, and am forced to make use of my put-you-up in the living room, which with my back is like sleeping on a time bomb. Is there any way you can arrange to take her back to Sheepdipper's shed to finish her convalescence with you? Quite frankly, I'm exhausted, and she's only been here a day and a half. Unfortunately, there has been a misunderstanding with the cable company, and I'm currently without a phone, so please write back immediately and let me know what you intend to do, and whatever it is, make it quick. Hope you're well, by the way, and kind regards to Anthony. With all good wishes, Irene.
The Limes, Saturday. Dear Howard, I don't know what Irene has told you, and I don't want to call her a liar, but it definitely isn't true. There was a small incident, I'll admit, but nothing like on the scale she has been suggesting, and certainly not for the reasons. The funeral was a pleasant enough affair. Can't say I took much to Tracy Snape. She's gone past her bloom very quickly. She's put on so much weight, and with her bottle-blonde hair she reminded me of a chat show hostess. She'd admitted to follow Bill's last instructions, no doubt getting even when he can't answer back, and the wake was an alcohol-free zone. One of Bill's golfing compadres, Barry Robotham, and I were chatting in the conservatory. Barry's a smoker, though only cigars. Needless to say, Tracy didn't have the heating on, and Barry, a charming man, was kind enough to offer me a drop of warming whisky in my tea. We soon got tripping down memory lane about Bill. Barry was a hoot, showing me some of his tricks with a golf club. Unfortunately, Tracy had left some pelargoniums. Well, that's what she called them. They looked like common or garden geraniums to me, rather too close to the edge of a shelf, and 3 or 4 did get broken. Barry is also a ballroom dancing champ. He's got international trophies. In no time he was demonstrating a couple of tricky steps in the Paso Doble, which has always been one of my favourites. Some people might say, indeed they did, and Irene was one of them, that dancing at a funeral shows disrespect. I had to remind her of the many rituals we had seen on our travels, where those in mourning were wearing considerably less than a lounge suit and a heliotrope two-piece. However, the tile floor in the conservatory was unusually slippery, possibly a film of ice due to the freezing temperature, and executing a flamboyant bull charge, I skidded, stepped on Barry's toe, threw out an arm to save myself, and punched him in the eye. Easily done, as I'm sure you'll agree. We both fell to the ground. Irene said afterwards we crashed and rolled around on top of one another, but that's a wild exaggeration. I have tried to explain what really happened, but my dentures have sustained irreparable damage, which makes speaking difficult, and Irene swears she can't read my writing. Staying with her under the circumstances is very trying, and I'd be grateful if you could come and get me as soon as possible. It is awkward to manage the train in plaster. Irene has just come in and brusquely informed me that it will take 6 weeks to replace my teeth on the NHS, so I must stop now and attempt to stick them together with some blue tack. Oh, for a blue Peter for the elderly. Your loving Mumsy. Kiss, kiss. P.S. Careful with that Niagara. Barry tells me it's easy to overdo it. Irene implied that's what we were testing on the conservatory floor.
Sheepdipper's Shed, Monday. Dear Irene, how lovely to hear from you after all this time, albeit in such painful circumstances. Mumsy's letter arrived by the second post, adding to the confusion. I think it's better to correspond directly with you, though, given the Alzheimer's situation. Poor Mumsy, she does have a way of courting disaster. Which limbs did she break exactly? We approached the hospital in Great Shagthorne about an ambulance, but the triage nurse, although he's a pet, said with all her problems she just didn't qualify as salvageable. His advice was a quick pillow over the face, but I'm sure he was only joking. Anthony is talking to our cheese man about borrowing his delivery van. We can lie her full length in that, which is more than we can in the MG midget. All being well, we'll be with you the day after tomorrow. Fondest regards, and a big kiss for Mumsy, not on her swollen lips. Howard. P.S. We long for something as adult as cable. Sadly, it hasn't reached the dull old Derby Dales.
Wednesday night. Dear Howard, Wednesday has come and gone with no sight nor sound of you. Did you mean you'd be arriving the day after tomorrow from you writing your note, or the day after tomorrow of me receiving it? Quite frankly, I am being run ragged here with demands for this and demands for that, and what with your mother's teeth going west and everything having to be pureed, and my blender giving up the ghost and having to do it all by hand through a sieve, and then her having an accident on the bed sheets with the beetroot borscht, I really don't think I could be held responsible if something dreadful happened. My blood pressure has rocketed, and the way I am feeling at the moment, one or other of us may be in great danger of dying through the living-room ceiling onto my head, as you'll notice from the runny ink. She'd fallen asleep in the bath with the tap running and her foot jammed in the overflow. Naturally, she survived. If you haven't arrived tomorrow to take her away, I'm afraid I will have to send her on to you in a minicab, COD. Yours, Irene. Went all right in the van last month, and that you survived the smell of the gorgonzola. And I hope that your leg is feeling better, and that the bostic on your dentures dried eventually without sticking your gums together as feared. As you will see from the contents of this parcel, you left a couple of undergarments behind, laundered and enclosed. I'm also enking some homemade fudge that you should be able to manage to suck, even if you still can't chew. I bought it from Mrs. Appleyard, who is renowned for her confectionery, at the home fair stall of the Minellium bus shelter Bring and Buy yesterday. A couple of people from the funeral were there, Ida Loseby and Mona Postlethwaite. I don't know if you remember them, but they remember you. They asked after you and told me to send you their best. It's hard to find the words, but I'm hoping that in time the dust may settle on this recent visit of yours, and that we can put behind us our hasty words. I bumped into Barry Rowbotham last week in the supermarket, and he was quick to take all the blame for the incident at the funeral. Thinking about it since, and you know what I'm like for dwelling on things until I've got them thoroughly sorted through, I've realised it was inevitable that we would get tense with each other at Bill's funeral after all the trouble he caused between us so long ago. It was 2 years before we managed to speak again after I found you in bed together, if you remember, and you may not know this, for you certainly didn't hear it from me. He had asked me only the day before if I'd consider taking the marital plunge. I really think that, all things being equal, if we could get over that, we can get over this. In pensive mood, I got out all your old letters today, and some rough copies of mine. I always like to neaten up mistakes afterwards, and usually make a fair copy of my missives, and I realise that the only time we have trouble between us is when we are actually together in the flesh. I was reminded how much I miss your cheery letters when we're at loggerheads and not speaking. Could we stick to the written word, do you think, and resist the temptation to meet? I don't know what it is about you, but I just seem to find you more palatable in print. Can bygones be bygone? Vera, it's hard to say it, but I'm sorry for my part if I caused offence during your stay. I was tetchy and under some strain. There. Now to the postbox with this before I change my mind. Time will tell if you feel the same. With fond regards and hopeful thoughts, your erstwhile friend, Irene.
The Homely Faggot, Western Esplanade, Vicar upon St Agnes, Friday. Dear Irene, really I've never known anyone like you for meeting trouble halfway, except perhaps Ethel Roscoe. As you can see, I'm staying with her to recuperate. I'd had all I could take of sheep dippers. My son Howard would insist on plunging my leg in sheep's urine, some ethnic health practice Anthony picked up. Thank goodness they didn't extend it to the dentures. Anyway, you will be pleased to know I am much better. In fact, as Karen said when I saw her last week and expressed surprise at her tattoo, apparently she's had it 2 years, Mother's back to normal. Speaking of memory loss, of course I remember Ida and Mona. Ida's the one whose husband was a transvestite, and Mona's the one you said looked like a Teletubby. I don't recall what these words were. You insisted you couldn't understand a thing I said, hasty or otherwise. Certainly you raised your voice more than was strictly necessary, but I put that down to your distress over Bill. I am more sensitive than you realise. I know perfectly well you've been carrying a candle for that two-timing creep for years, and in my opinion it's a good thing he's dead, especially living so close to you. Now you can move on with your life, Irene, instead of hoping he will ever come back. You've missed a lot of chances. There was that nice Italian policeman on our trip, and the mechanic who mended the dormobile. Ethel's just come back in with the fish, and news that there's sheltered accommodation going near the beach. I shall pop down tomorrow and investigate. All for now, and rest assured your secrets are safe with me. And Ethel Roscoe. Love as always, thee. Saturday. Dear Irene, just had to send you a card with the good news. I got the accommodation. It's not exactly sheltered, unless you count the cliff, but it is near the beach. In fact, it's on it. The last incumbent, poor soul, went out for a paddle and never came back. It's an ill wind. I am now the proud tenant of a caravan. It's in a large park with all mod cons and facilities. Bet you can't wait to visit. V. P.S. Right care of Ethel Roscoe.
Tuesday, dear Vera. Is there anyone in your acquaintance who is as perfect as you? In the first few lines of your letter you managed to insult me, your only begotten son Howard, and his partner, and poor old Ethel Roscoe. Strange, since the one thing that we have in common is that we have all recently extended the hand of friendship to you and put you up, leaving aside putting up with you. I don't know where to start with your wild and inaccurate observations. I have not been carrying a candle for Bill, or a torch for that matter, which I believe is the usual nomenclature. As far as I'm concerned, it was over before it had begun, practically. It is true that I was foolish enough to feel warmly towards him all those years ago when he first became my gentleman friend, but once you and he started to see each other behind my back, it was over and out as far as I was concerned. Do I need to remind you of the country hotel weekend break for 3, where I discovered the two of you wrapped around each other and canoodling in the king-size 4-poster? As Marjorie Proops once wrote to a woman unfortunate enough to have been in my position, one expects such faithlessness from men, but from a woman friend, never. Believe you me, the reason I was tense at his funeral was because it reminded me of your betrayal, not his. As for me now being able to move on in life and missing lots of chances, may I remind you that the only reason that nice Italian policeman, incidentally they are called carabinieri in their language, so named because of their rifles, you'd know that if you'd paid more attention to the culture of the countries we passed through, instead of singing Viva España and the chicken song at every bar and disco you could find that served baked beans on toast. Where was I? Oh, yes. The only reason he became interested in me was because I had to flutter my lashes at him to stop you being shot. You had had far too much to drink, and you were driving at twice the speed limit down the autostrada with a paper bag over your head because you said, or screamed, as I remember, you couldn't stand the sight of me any more. Likewise, the mechanic had to be mollified because we hadn't enough money to pay him for the repairs. If you call that, or similar, moving on in life, I don't wonder you are now living in a caravan park. And, speaking of which, I don't know why you want me to correspond with your care of Ethel. If you think for one moment that I would visit you if you gave me your address, then you obviously didn't understand a single word of my letter. Last, and by no means least, I don't know where you get the idea that Ida's husband is a transvestite. He wears bells on his trousers and a funny hat because he is a Morris dancer, and that is all. Perhaps you have been hanging around sheep dippers for too long. I notice you don't thank me for laundering your smalls, or for the fudge, but perhaps you are sent such gifts every day of the week and therefore don't think it worthy of comment. I was very sorry to read of the fate of the previous incumbent of your caravan. As you say, that poor woman's tragedy is your gain, but then that seems to be how life goes for you, doesn't it? I shall think of you when you are moving into your new home, and hope that all goes well. Happy paddling. Kind regards, Irene. Tuesday. Dear Ethel, I hope you don't mind being a post-restaurant, but Vera asked me to write to her care of you. Would you mind very much giving her the Enk missive? I hope you have been having jolly times together. She is great fun, of course, and so brave considering what she has to put up with. I don't know whether she has told you since she is the last one to ask for sympathy, but her only son is gay, and her daughter is a single mother, so it's hardly surprising she sometimes needs the solace of another woman's husband or lover. It's so sad to think that her memory is going. She told me in her last letter that she hadn't known her daughter was tattooed, but Karen has had mum on one hand and hate on the other for ages since. I know I can rely on your discretion not to spread any of this around, now that she is trying to move on in life and make her new home in your town. Hope you are keeping well. Kindest regards, Irene Spencer.
Lodge 202, Farshaw's Trailer Park, Vicar upon St Agnes, Thursday. Irene. It has come to my ears that you have been spreading malicious gossip about me. Ethel Roscoe popped down to the park this afternoon to tell me herself. Apparently my children are odd as the result of an abusive childhood. My grandchild is illegitimate, and my husband died in mysterious circumstances after learning I was a serial adulterer. Speaking of which, you are someone to complain of wild and inaccurate observations. My so-called affair with Bill Snapes is a total ligament of your imagination. As I think I told you at the time, our being in bed together was a mistake from start to finish. There I was, as I thought, on a weekend break you had booked for you, me and Bill as 3 swinging singles, and I find myself in the honeymoon suite with a man I've barely been introduced to. Though, come to think of it, I could say the same for the first night I spent with my husband Gerald. It was all your fault for booking the blithering honeymoon suite to begin with. It had more doors than a French farce. What with separate bathrooms, walk-in wardrobes and dimness of lighting, it's a wonder Bill and I found our way to the bed at all. As it was a king size, we were peacefully slumbering at either side, without even knowing the other was there. I don't know which of the 3 of us was more surprised when we woke up and found you wedged between us. I can recall to this day your fury. You were white-faced even through your makeup. You tried to pass it off as a mistake the hotel had made. But who goes to bed in false eyelashes and bright pink lipstick except in an advert? It was quite clear you had intended all along to end up in the bridal suite with Bill, and only the lateness of your train meant I got there before you. Fortunately, 3 in a bed is all de rigueur in a trailer park. If anything, your outrageous fabrications have raised my profile. I saw several people in the communal facilities pointing and staring with awe on their faces. On reflection, that could have been owing to the state of my undies. The ones you returned are a violent shade of puce. Did you wash them with the beetroot borscht sheets? The fudge, by the way, finally put paid to my dentures. On contact with it, the Bostik melted. But, as I was saying, I don't want this outrageous slander all over St. Agnes. I dread to think what could have happened if that letter had got into the wrong hands. I'm at a loss to understand your motives. All I have ever tried to be is a friend to you. As such, I have discussed your perfidy with our site security guard. Ethel got it wrong. This accommodation is not sheltered, it is protected. And he says, for a couple of £100 or so, he will pay you a visit. Yours, Vera. P.S. His name is Damon, but not for nothing is he known as Demon. The last person who caused bother to a resident is still in traction. Dear Howard, sorry to be a bother, but could you return that £250 I lent you to install the jacuzzi? I wouldn't ask you unless it was a matter of urgent family honour. Mother.
Ridiculous assertions in your last missive. I have certainly never ever told anybody that the circumstances of your late husband Gerald's death were mysterious. How could I, when I didn't even know myself until you just told me in your aforementioned missive? I will not stoop to address your false memory syndrome about our so-called 3-in-a-bed situation with Bill Snapes. Suffice it to say, I thought it was buried in the past, but obviously you still enjoy getting it out for further inspection and rejigging of the facts. As for threatening me with a guerrilla attack from a hired assassin, I can only think that you have embraced the lurid ethos of the trailer park you talk so proudly of with eager arms. Do not for one moment think that I am frightened by these scare tactics. I am merely hurt to have my friendship so rebuffed. Goodbye, and good luck with the rest of your life. Irene Spencer. The Limes, Saturday. Dear Leslie, I've been thinking about you so much lately and realised that it is selfish of me to let a little thing like fear of flying put me off visiting you in Melbourne. And if I don't come soon, little Cheryl Marie won't know her dear old Granny Spencer. I have been looking into the rigmarole of getting a flight and insurance and applying for a visa and sorting things out this end so I can come for a good long stay, and find that, unfortunately, I won't be able to be with you before this coming Wednesday. Oh, my love, dear. Mummy, kiss, kiss, kiss.
Farshaw's Trailer Park, Tuesday. Dear Irene, can you ever forgive me? I don't know what came over me. Trailer park dementia is the only excuse I can offer. I'm afraid they all watch far too many hysterical TV soaps and then tailor their lives accordingly. My next-door neighbour, Yasmin, has had her patio dug up 3 times by police looking for parts of her common-law husband. She says she wouldn't mind them finding him. He still owes her £48.50, but I presume she means in one piece, alive and kicking, which by all accounts he did frequently. Speaking of kicking, from the couple on the other side I hear constant screaming and shouting. One night I could stand it no more and went round to beg them to stop. I found him handcuffed to the bunk bed and her dressed head to toe in black PVC, slapping him about with a fish slice. This was an unexpected view of marital abuse, but when I threatened to call social services, they laughed. Apparently they were making material for surfers to download from the net. They explained I was now on video, and if I wanted to stay and join in, they'd split the proceeds with me. There must be quite a taste for this sort of thing. They've got a socking great Mercedes parked outside. But I digress. I am really writing to apologise for my threatening letter, and even worse, for following it up in reality. Imagine my surprise and distress when our trailer park site security guard, Damon, returned with the news that the house was locked and shuttered, and the neighbours had told him you had fled the country. As he said himself, he has enough respect for someone of your great age, and the most he would have done was trash your flower beds. He's actually rather sweet, and most days pops round to check I'm all right and collect his £5. Yesterday he offered to pierce my navel. I'm sure it was kindly meant, and not because I didn't have any change on me. I've just realised I have no idea where to send this. Where are you, Irene? Perhaps you're scared to tell me, but you need have no fear of further reprisals. I couldn't possibly afford to give Damon another £250. Oh, I can see the postman hovering the other side of the barbed wire. He won't deliver on the site because of Damon's pit bull terrier. Later. The post brought a card from my daughter Karen telling me you have gone to Australia. This was followed by a tirade of abuse which I presume blames me, but I've suffered so many over the years that as soon as I got to selfish, thoughtless, vile, ignorant, etc., etc., I ceased reading. No address, so I shall stick to Plan A. I do hope this finds you, my dear, and that all is not lost. I understand you can wander for days in the outback, with only swaggermen and dingoes for company. Once more, many apologies, and all my love, Vera.
19 Byron Street, St. Urban, Melbourne, Victoria, Monday. Dear Vera, your letter has finally caught up with me, and I have paid the excess postage it cost to send it on here. Fortunately, since it only contained one sheet of paper and all your love, it didn't weigh very much. I have thought long and hard as to whether to reply, but then I remembered it was coming up to your birthday, at least if you're posting from Australia, so I have decided to risk it and send you a card. If you've been threatening all your friends with bodily harm lately, it may be the only one you get. I know you still don't enclose your full address, so I shall have to send it care of the trailer park and hope it finds you. I can hardly credit the life you describe there, and can only hope you are happy at last to have found your level. I'm having a wonderful time here with my daughter Leslie, and I'm so glad to be able to spend so much quality time with my little granddaughter Cheryl Marie. I really don't know how Leslie managed without me. It must be heartbreaking for you, missing your own granddaughter's childhood, what with you being constantly at loggerheads with Karen. She wrote me a lovely long letter the other week, incidentally, full of fun as usual. She's thinking of coming out here on a visit. I hope you won't be too lonely spending your birthday on your own, but at least on your caravan site it won't be dull by the sounds of it. Karen told me that she definitely wouldn't be spending it with you this year. She phrased it rather differently, actually, but that was the gist, and she didn't think her brother Howard or his partner Anthony would be either. All for now, as I must trot off and pick up Cheryl Marie from kindergarten and get something for our tea. Poor Leslie's worked off her feet at the estate agency and has to spend an incredible amount of evenings dining with clients. She often gets home after midnight quite exhausted, poor lamb. Happy birthday. Regards, Irene.
Lodge 202, Far Shores Trailer Park, Vicar upon St Agnes, Sunday. Dearest Irene, how wonderful to hear from you after all this time. I thought you were dead. Perhaps savaged by kangaroos. I saw a programme on Discovery about them, and apparently they can turn quite nasty. Trust Karen not to tell me she's been corresponding with you all this time. She was always very secretive when she was a child. I only found out she knew about babies, though in the light of events clearly not enough, by reading her diary. Thank you for your birthday greetings. Sweet of you to remember. Personally, I'd rather not at my age, but this year I didn't have a choice. My neighbours Yasmin and Carol, have I mentioned Carol? She's the one who's involved in net mail order videos. Decided to give me a party. Yasmin does tarot readings, so of course she knew the date, and she'd arranged a wonderful surprise with all the park residents. She'd even invited Howard and Karen. Needless to say, their names had come up in my reading. Howard as the hanging man and Karen as the death card. The whole park was decorated with bunting. It was a chilly night, but it warmed up when we roasted half a cow and 20 pounds of sausages. Carol's got an arrangement with the local butcher, something to do with the videos. Of course, the hooch from Dave and Barbara still helped. They make a fiery concoction in an old tin bath in the lean-to which used to house their Elsan. The only thing that was chilled, in Damon's parlance, at my barbecue was the guest list. In fact, the party was kicking, to use the word for once in a less unpleasant connotation. Karen never appeared, which was a pity, as Yasmin had offered a forecast. I forecast she wouldn't come, which hardly makes me psychic. But despite a breakdown, possibly the car or possibly Anthony, who was in tears, Howard and Anthony arrived in time for the fireworks, a stunning display of Damon's homemade pyrotechnics. Speaking of bangers, the site is littered with them. Several flew through the air, along with Howard's toupee and the remains of the cow. Howard is now thinking of employing Damon for his Millennium Bash, as he can always lay his hands on Semtex. I'm so looking forward to the Millennium. Yasmin has prophesied a high time here. I prophesy it will be in more ways than one if Damon has anything to do with it. Have you made any plans yet? What exactly is the religion in Australia? Anyway, my dear, I'm babysitting Yasmin's children while she takes part in a mystic fair. I won't get a word written there. I need both hands free for them, so I'll finish. Oh, Irene, I have missed your letters. I've told everyone here so much about you, Yasmin could do you an absent reading. Do keep in touch now. I'm longing to hear more about your life in Oz. Love, Vera.
Down Under, Tuesday night, or is it Wednesday morning? Dear Vera, thank you for your vivid account of your birthday celebrations. It sounded very pleasant if that is your preference for conviviality. It has been my birthday today. Don't feel guilty about not sending a card, whatever you do. It really couldn't matter less, and I have had the most wonderful time sampling the fruits of the New World vineyards. To make up for me having to babysit tonight while she, poor love, had to go to dinner with yet another client, Leslie bought me a case of Victorian wines all to myself. That's wines made in the state of Victoria, by the by, not during the late Queen's reign. Took me a while to work that one out. I may be a little tipsy, so please excuse the writing. Now, to satisfy your curiosity about Australia, it is very big, for starters, and very far away from everywhere else. Here you have to think of everything upside down. A north-facing garden means as much to them as a south-facing one does to us, being in the other hemisphere. Melbourne is down south, and Melbournians are very proud of their weather. They will tell you at the drop of a hat that they can have all 4 seasons in any given day. Today, for example, I set off for a stroll along the beach in glorious sunshine, only to be hit by hailstones the size of tennis balls on the way back. Believe me, a parasol is no defence against Antarctic ice. But speaking of tennis balls, I must tell you about the sausage sizzle I went to at the weekend, held by the local tennis club to attract veterans to start going to play in the afternoons. Of course, I hadn't been in whites for many a long year, but fortunately there was a group of novices like myself, so I joined their number. There was one lady there who reminded me of you, actually. Very jolly, but ma, she suffered in the heat with all her bulk. But anyway, there was a lovely man there called Vincent, retired, a widower, very nicely turned out, and with a full head of hair and beautifully shaped hands. I think even his teeth are his own. As things fell out, we partnered each other most of the afternoon and got on very well, and though Leslie's house is really not far from the club, he insisted on giving me a lift home. When it emerged in casual conversation that it was going to be my birthday in a couple of days, he suggested he take me out to lunch. Actually, he suggested dinner, but what with Leslie's busy schedule, I knew I couldn't count on having the night off, which is where I've been today. He'd booked us into a very exclusive restaurant at the harbour with a wonderful view and no expense spared. I had oysters, crayfish and 3 kinds of chocolate mousse, and it was superb. It was so lovely to have the company of a man again, and he's so much better looking than Bill. Unfortunately, he has to visit his grandchildren for a few days now, but we've arranged to play tennis again next Wednesday. Just got up to let Leslie in and fell down. Oh, now, a bit tiddly. Tell more about Australia next time. Felt all right before, but standing was a mistake. Remind me to tell you about the possum. Love from your pal, inebriated Irene. Joke. Kiss, 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 kiss.
How remiss of me to forget your birthday. Really, sometimes I wonder if my daughter Karen isn't right about the state of my brain, though it goes against the grain to admit it. Enclosed is a birthday tarot from my neighbour Yasmin, which I gave her all the data to prepare. Funnily enough, I remembered that perfectly. I had to guess the time of birth, of course, but I do recall you telling me your mother cursed you for arriving when she was at her lowest ebb, so I imagine that was about 4 a.m. Yasmin also brought this little news article, which, having done your reading, she thought might be of interest. Perhaps you'd better show it to Vincent. Keep on with the wine tasting, then you won't go all buttoned up on him. Men like a chatty woman. Oz really does sound like the land of change, especially the weather. Talking of hailstones, I am off to Sheep Dippers for the weekend. It's my son Howard and his partner Anthony's anniversary, and they are having a do. Howard wants a hand with the catering, plenty of sizzling sausages. It's a fork and finger event. There's life in us old girls yet, eh? Promise to write fully on my return. Love, V. P.S. Don't forget to tell me about the possum.
From the Vicar upon St. Agnes Star. The secret to a long and healthy life is sex. Sex keeps people young and vibrant and halts the ageing process, according to Dr. Raj Garibaldi, who insists ageless national icons like Margaret Thatcher and the Queen Mother are leading very vigorous sex lives. St. Urban, Tuesday. Dear Vera, sorry it's been a few weeks since writing. I'm afraid in the interim I've mislaid your last letter, so I can't remember if there were any questions therein. All I could find is a rather puzzling news clipping from your local rag. I do seem to remember you appeared to be obsessed with sex in your letter, which is a shame in an older person, I always think, and more often seems to afflict the men, as in dirty old, etc. Have you started back on the UHT again, I wonder? I really don't think it suits you. Thank you for the birthday tarot reading from your new friend Yasmin. Is that a Romany name? Which I found today at the back of my underwear drawer. I didn't know they needed birth dates and times for the cards. I thought that was astrology. Anyway, if they do, and if it is important to the accuracy, it explains why it makes no sense to me at all. You got the year of my birth so wrong that I'd be 83. Was that your little joke, or her bad handwriting? Certainly I have never seen myself as having a burning, passionate nature hidden beneath a cool exterior which aches to be torn down. I would consider myself to be almost the opposite, in fact, at least as far as any tearing down goes. At any rate, I can see what Karen means about your memory. Did I mention in my last that I have joined a tennis club? I now play 2 afternoons a week, partnered by a charming gentleman called Vincent. He is a widower, very fit and active for his years, with a full head of hair and all his own teeth. He used to be in hosiery, I believe. Imagine my surprise when he insisted on taking me out to lunch on my birthday. We went to a very exclusive harbourside restaurant and ate oysters and crayfish and 3 kinds of wine, including a champagne, one to go with each course. The wine here is very good, much better than European. Leslie bought me a mixed case for my birthday as an introduction to New World viniculture, but there seem to be so many to learn. It's no use, I've got to stop. The ruddy possum is at it again and I just can't concentrate for the racket. Remind me to tell you about it another time. Rise soon, Irene.
Lodge 202, Far Shores Trailer Park, Vicar upon St. Agnes, Thursday. Or Friday. Dear Irene, I started a letter to you ages ago, but I've quite forgotten where I put it. Incidentally, you did mention Vincent, the tennis club, the teeth, the lunch, the oysters, the crayfish, and the wine in your last one. Perhaps you should go easy on the New World viniculture. Is that an Australian expression? Where on earth do you get the idea that I'm sex-obsessed? I haven't given it a thought in days. And no, I am not on UHT, but I'm sure this genetically modified food has a lot to answer for. Howard won't touch it. Which reminds me, I was writing to you about his do, which gave a whole new meaning to fork and finger. I didn't know it was possible to attach so much metal to body parts. One of Howard's friends appeared to be wearing an entire canteen of cutlery, and outside of a boot fair I've never seen so much fingering in public. They were all over the sizzling sausages. I'm still shockable, it seems, despite everything we see nowadays on television. The most important news is that my daughter Karen was there with her little girl Sabrina. It was the first time I'd seen them in over a year. And my, how Sabrina has grown. When I arrived, she didn't seem to know who I was, and asked if it was me who Mummy kept calling the mad old bat. When Karen heard I was living in a trailer park, she laughed raucously and said I'd graduated from soap opera to cartoon, whatever that means. Anyway, being homeless again, she decided to come and stay, though of course I'd pointed out that space was limited. The first morning was very awkward. I'd put up a curtain to give her some privacy, but she still sleeps till lunchtime and I needed to get to the kitchenette, so I popped my head round and asked if she wanted some brunch. She swore loudly and said, "Give me a chance to put my knickers on before you start stuffing food down me." I admit I was hurt. I said I don't seem able to do a thing right these days, to which she responded, "Crashing in on a person when they're half-naked is never right, Mother, and you've been doing it for 65 years. She is as rude as ever, and besides, how does she know? I've only been doing it to her for 35 of them. This morning she staggered up and snapped off my favourite classical music radio programme, saying it did her head in. She's been here a month, and if she doesn't go soon, it will do my head in. How do you manage with Leslie? Perhaps it's easier because she's out all the time. Whatever kind of a job requires 7 days a week? I hope she's getting good bonuses. I'd be glad if Karen got any job at all. My pension won't stretch to the luxuries she demands. She's just given me a list, which includes Java coffee beans, Gravidlax, luxury shower gel and a mobile phone. I shall have to speak to our site security guard, Damon. All for now. It's time to pick Sabrina up from school. She is lodging next door with Carol and Terry. Write soon. I need support. Lots of love, Vera. P.S. What on earth's going on with the possum?
St. Urban, Australia, dear Vera, thank you for your newsy letter. I won't bother to tell you any more about my lovely outings with Vincent if it causes offence, and I do so apologise, I'm sure, if I've been boring you with my repetition. By the by, speaking of which, although you claim not to be obsessed with sex, I notice you managed to cram it in twice in one paragraph. I can't imagine where you get the idea that my repeating myself has anything to do with drink, as I am just a social drinker, as you well know. It's just old age and can't be helped. As I keep having to explain to Leslie, wait till it happens to you. I only wish I'd be there to say I told you so when her little brain isn't as sharp as it is now. How funny that we're both involved in looking after our grandchildren at the moment. Having children is much nicer the second time round, don't you find? Or maybe it's just that Cheryl Marie is an easier child than Leslie was. Incidentally, you ask what type of job she has, although I'm sure I've mentioned several times. Perhaps you're the one who's drinking too much and killing off brain cells. She is an estate agent, so Saturdays and Sundays Leslie's either showing houses or out selling them under her hammer. The auctions are held outside the property in the street and are quite exciting. Usually they have a dummy bidder just to start the ball rolling, and my services have been called upon in this respect a couple of times. You asked me to tell you about the possum, but I'm sure I already have. When you see them in the garden, they're really very sweet, so you wouldn't mind them living in the attic if it wasn't for them doing their business through the ceiling. You wouldn't believe it, just as I was writing about it. You'd almost think they could read your thoughts, right on my head this time and all over this letter. Well, I'm sorry, I haven't got time to write it out again. This is already my fair copy. I've dabbed it with kitchen paper, and that will have to do. It's just lucky I'm using biro instead of pen and ink. And now I shall have to shampoo my hair before picking up little Cheryl Marie from school, and ring Pete the possum up again to make another appointment, and scrub the sofa and rug. And here I am, supposed to be enjoying my retirement and being cosseted a bit myself in my old age. A woman's work is never done, Vera, particularly if she's a grandmother. Do give Karen my love, and tell her I'll be replying to her letter soon. What a pity you haven't been getting on better. She's such a lovely girl. Isn't it great that she and Damon seem to be hitting it off? All for now. Take care, love. Irene. Kiss, kiss.
Lodge 202, Far Shores Trailer Park, Vicar upon St Agnes, Monday, dear Irene. I didn't know a thing about Karen and Damon hitting it off until Karen announced they were going to San Tropez for the weekend. Apparently Damon has associates in protection on a caravan site there. Needless to say, I was expected to look after Sabrina. Not that it was any hardship. She really is delightful. I can always get a cuddle from her. Karen was such an unrewarding child in that department. She would go as stiff as a board whenever I attempted to touch her. I can only assume Damon does not encounter the same problem. I've taken advantage of her absence to move Sabrina in with me. To be honest, I'd become a little concerned at her boarding next door with Carol and Terry, what with them being in the sex video business. Sabrina kept appearing with new shoes and chocolate, and one hears such terrible things nowadays. Besides, I just couldn't stand having Karen as a guest a moment longer. I have now reorganised the space so Sabrina has her own little bedroom and play area. And without Karen's 14 boxes of cosmetics, including a do-it-yourself piercing kit, I can now get into my own bathroom. I'm considering getting an extension built on. Dave next door but one has offered to do it. My days revolve round Sabrina's needs, and I admit it's given me a new lease of life. I think that nice Jack Straw is right about appointing surrogate grannies. Perhaps his own childhood was deprived of one. By the way, I know what you mean about business. What with the dogs, cats, goats and chickens, the site is littered with it. The other day, Sabrina came in and said she'd been playing marbles. Imagine my disgust when I found they were dried rabbit pellets. Friday. Karen returned, very brown, last night, and informed me she was moving in with Damon. She wants Sabrina to move in with them. Over my dead body. Must stop. It's Sabrina's bath time. Then I read her a story. When she arrived, all her books were about one-parent families and children brought up by same-sex couples. We're so enjoying Wind in the Willows. Huggies, as Sabrina says, thee. P.S. I enclose a photo of Sabrina and me taken by Carol. Do send some of you and Cheryl Marie. And the possum.
You started it on the Monday and finished it on the Friday. Is that because it was an awful chore, or did you mislate? I hope it was the latter, although I wouldn't wish memory loss on anybody, not even my worst enemy. You'd think I was gaga the way my daughter Leslie goes on when I can't think of a word. And speaking of gaga, how on earth can you compare possum piddle to rabbit pellets? Do you think we have a hole in the ceiling for it to poo through? Its number ones came dripping down on my head when I was writing last time, not its number twos. I can't believe I'm having to write this and be so explicit, trust you. We've had Pete the possum round twice now, but it just seems to find its way in again. They put a trap in the attic with a bit of apple as bait. You know when it's been caught because it bangs the cage about like Billy-O. The first time it happened I thought we'd got burglars and I phoned the police. I did feel a fool. Thank you for the photograph of Sabrina. What a sweet little girl she's proving to be, and so like her granny. She certainly got your nose. Here's one of Cheryl Marie taking her to fancy dress. She's the one dressed as little Bo Peep. She's such a little actress and yet so practical. See how she'd taken the telescope from Captain Cook to look for a sheep. Captain Cook was the Englishman who discovered Australia, but if you ask me, it couldn't have been very difficult. After all, the Aborigines had already been living here for thousands of years, so they must have found it easily enough. I've just returned from another wonderful day out with Vincent. He's such a lovely man and such good company. He won't let me do a thing for myself when we're together. He even opens the car door for me and makes sure I'm settled nicely before he goes all the way round to get in himself. The only time Clive did that was once when we were courting, and then he slammed the door on my leg. Vincent keeps talking about us going away for a weekend, but I don't know how Leslie would manage without me if we did. She's out at work so much, poor dear, that we hardly ever see each other. We communicate by notes. It's not so much like having a daughter, it's more like having another pen pal. I had a super postcard from your daughter Karen from Saint-Tropez telling me all about her exciting news. I bet you can't wait, and Sabrina must be over the moon. I often worry about Cheryl Marie being an only. Leslie was, of course, and I'm afraid she got very spoilt as a result. Don't be worried about Karen's new beau, Damon, being wayward. As I said to her in my last, this might be just the thing to settle him down. All for now. Hope this finds you as it leaves me, pleasantly exhausted after a thoroughly enjoyable day. Fondest thoughts, Irene.
Lodge 202, Farshaw's Trailer Park, Friday. Dear Vera, Irene. I'm so upset I forgot my own name now. Thank you for informing me in your last of Karen's exciting news. It was certainly more than she had bothered to do. Odd to be told of your daughter's pregnancy via Australia when she's living 20 yards away. We have the speed of technology to thank for that, I suppose. Thank goodness I don't have email, or I could have known before she did. She hasn't spoken to me since I confronted her with your letter, but Sabrina came back from school demanding a home computer, so I've had to communicate with Damon. He's as pleased as a pit bull terrier with two tails. He's already making a list of names and has started to call me mother. I hope this doesn't find you as it leaves me, hurt and confused. Yours, Irene. Vera. Saturday. Dear Howard, I am writing to tell you, since I'm sure Karen won't, really, when I think of the money I've wasted on joined-up writing tuition, that we are to have an addition to the family. You will soon be the proud uncle of a boy called Dale or Liam or Vinny. I dread to think what the poor mite will be named if she's a girl, but Damon doesn't entertain the possibility. I only found out by a chance remark from Irene, proof as ever that Karen cuts me cruelly out of her life. It'll be a different story when she wants baby clothes or a babysitter. Sorry, dear, if I'm sounding depressed. Sometimes I think the world has changed in such a bewildering way I no longer feel a part of it. Hope you and Anthony are happy, at least, with the sheep. Mumsy. Monday, dear Ms. Matthews. I understand from my granddaughter Sabrina Small that to keep abreast of her studies she must have a state-of-the-art computer with built-in modem, fax and heliport. I am an OAP on an inadequate fixed income. Has Tony Blair considered people like us in his enthusiasm for IT, I wonder? And I'm at a loss to know where to turn. Are there any grants available? Yours sincerely, Vera Small.
Thursday. Dear Vera, I'm very worried about you. You seem absolutely distraught. In fact, you must be to send me all your other correspondence in your last. I'm sending back the ink because I don't know Sabrina's school's address, but I forwarded Howard's letter to him at Sheep Dippers. I've also taken the liberty of writing a little note to Karen in the hope of pouring oil on troubled waters. Now, come on, chin up, look at the positive. I've been reading all about it in one of Leslie's many self-help books that she bought when she was going through the divorce. You count your blessings, write them down. You'll be surprised how they add up. Oh, dear, I was going to help by starting a list, but it's time for tennis, so you'll have to do it on your own. Probably more therapeutic anyway. Cheerio for now and get on with that list. Sending love and encouraging thoughts, Irene. Kiss, kiss. 19 Byron Street, St. Urban, Melbourne, Thursday. Dear Howard, your mother sent the ink to me in error, so by the time you get this, what with the post, you'll have been waiting a couple of weeks for a reply. She seems in a terrible state, and I really think she needs a break from trailer park life. Couldn't you and Anthony have her to stay for a little holiday? I know she can be difficult, but I do think it sounds like a real cry for help, don't you? Would you let me know how she seems when you see her? Fondest regards, and also to Anthony, Irene Spencer. Thursday, dear Karen. Here at last are the booties I promised. I made them in unisex yellow, as you can see. I told your mum about the baby, as you asked, and you were right, it did come as a bit of a shock, but I'm sure inside she's as thrilled as you are. I think it might have helped if you'd told her that you and Damon were an item, as you call it, from the start. I think she thought of him as her special friend. She often mentioned him in her letters, so there may have been a little bit of jealousy there, just a thought. Anyway, dear, I know you try to be kind and patient with her, and of course I don't think you were selfish to move out of the caravan and leave her on her own. I spent several weeks cooped up in a dormobile with her when we toured the continent, don't forget, and I thought I'd end up in the funny farm. Take care, and love to Damon. Lots of love and hugs. Reen, kiss, kiss, kiss.
Middle Parks, Middle Piddle, Wuss, Wed. Dear Irene, enjoying a few days at magical Middle Parks. It was Sabrina's half-term, and what with everything, I felt I needed a break, so I cashed in a little insurance policy, and we just took off. Sabrina is having a fine old time with all the activities, and I am basking in the indoor sun, so much more reliable than the real thing, and I believe less damaging. You would know all about that in Australia, of course. Doesn't it hold the world record for skin cancer? Hope you're not economising with the sunblock on your tennis outings. One looks a fool with all those white stripes, but better safe than sorry. You've probably written in reply to my last, so this may cross with it, but I just wanted to put your mind at rest that I'm feeling much better, what with the aromatherapy massage, my neighbour Yasmin's instructions, and leisurely drinks round the pool. Just popped on a sarong. I'm sure you've discovered them so comfortable. To go for one now. A charming widower here has invited me for tropical cocktails. I enclose a couple of postcards so you can see the luxuriant foliage. Love, and thanks for being a good, albeit distant friend, Vera. Thurs, dear Howard, just a quick postcard from our lovely residence. I never imagined a log cabin could be so comfortable. A huge bath and no need to wrestle with gas cylinders. I could stay here forever. Sabrina sends love, as I do, Mumsy.
Very late on Saturday night. Dear Vera, thank you for the letter. I'm so relieved you seem to be feeling better. I was quite worried about you. Depression is an awful thing, isn't it? Or so I suppose. I've never suffered from it myself, fortunately. Since I last wrote, I have joined a creative writing class for senior citizens. It's funny, isn't it? I have to come the other side of the world to do things I could have been doing all along at home, playing tennis, penning poems, but one just doesn't seem to get round to it in the normal run of things. I suppose it's that knowing so few people here, there aren't the usual distractions. Apart from looking after Cheryl Marie full-time, that is. Leslie's had to go away for a week on a course now. Her boss seems to think a great deal of her. He came to pick her up personally in his car to run her out to the airport. I can't seem to get to sleep tonight, so I've been having a bit of fun alone, opening up a few bottles of the Victorian wine Leslie bought me and doing blind tastings. I don't know if I'm getting any better at it. They all seem to taste nice to me, but it passes the time. Oh, well, I'll try to sleep again. At this rate, Cheryl Marie will be up before I've gone to bed. Hope you're still feeling the benefit of your holiday. Fond regards, Irene. P.S. Couldn't sleep, so penned this poem, Enk. Reflections in the Dead of Night, a poem by Irene Spencer. Looking up at the coal-black sky, I see my life and wonder why. Why did I do this? Why did I do that? E.g., why did I buy that hat? It looked so pretty in the shop, with bows a-quiver, brim a-flop. What happened on the way back home to change it to a shapeless dome? And isn't that a lot like life, when you cut it apart with a surgeon's knife? How oft do we rush after new fool's gold instead of treasuring the trusty old?
Lodge 202, Farshaw's Trailer Park, Saturday. Irene! Arrived home to crossed letters and crossed wires. What on earth did you say to my son Howard and daughter Karen after my confidential disclosures? Whatever it was has released a maelstrom. Howard was convinced I'd run away to live in a log cabin. It was a cry for help, and I was in a terrible state, as I am jealous of Karen's relationship with Damon. They all agreed I'd gone completely round the twist and absconded with Sabrina. I was lucky to escape arrest. They've had the police out, scouring the country, and hourly bulletins on national radio. It was only the peace and seclusion of Middle Piddle that kept me from knowing about it. I've explained to the police that I left a note under the door of Damon's trailer, and his blasted pit bull terrier must have chewed it, but they refused to believe me. They are now considering prosecution. Judging by the doggerel you enclosed, I can only assume you got carried away by the creative side of your writing. Either that or you've been indulging in too many blind tastings. If this is what you call treasuring the trusty old, I'd rather not be one of them. Karen is demanding I give Sabrina back, though she, of course, wants to stay with me, and I'm now to be assessed by social workers. A Ms. Clinch is coming to make a home visit. Don't write again unless it is to offer something in mitigating circumstances, Vera.